Oh, what's up, brother?
What's up? Long time no see.
Yeah, man, what's been new?
A ton, apparently.
A ton.
Yeah, the fun recovery process.
Yes. Okay. So what happened here? Because last time we talked, you were like, what, 2, 3 weeks out from this meet, this big meet, hybrid,
Yeah, this
whatever it was, Ghost Clash, and
yeah,
then
the
your
Ghost
back got
Clash
injured.
meet, which apparently everyone ended up getting injured for this meet because Chad Penson also tore a hamstring or tore a quad 2 weeks out as well. So I was pretty bummed because this was not to sound cocky, and everyone's be like, "Oh, you can't talk shit because you didn't even show up to the meet." But like Raw with Wraps, this was a walk-in win for me from like at least the gym lifts that I hit. So all I needed to do was kind of show up to the meet. And we spoke at 3 weeks out, and I was just getting into like the 90 to 100% rep ranges, which should have been okay. So 22 days out, and so many people will speculate what actually caused what, but we can kind of go over that, I guess, in this podcast. I started the weight cut 3 weeks out, as you know, and then 3 days into the weight cut, I tore my shoulder on a 480 pound for two bench. So like the first rep easy, second rep came down, twinged my shoulder, spotter lifted it up, and I couldn't even bench the bar after that. But I kind of knew that like with the peptides and with the growth hormone, shoulder is one of those things that can recover fairly quickly. So I knew if I just took 3 weeks off, I could go into the meet and still bench 500, which is all I needed to do to get second all time for 198. So like 500 was kind of like the stand point. Fast forward to deadlifts, did 790 for a single and it flew. So I'm like, okay, deadlifts were pushing 800 plus. Going into that last week, I'm like, yo, things are perfect. Like, we're actually going to total close to 20, or as long as the meet goes according to training, which obviously no isn't always the case, but we're going to total close to 2050, 2100 at 198. Go to do a conservative one rep max on squat, which was 775. Squat was easy. Obviously, the video's on Instagram. I racked it, and the minute the bar left my back, my whole back seized up again. And I'm like, okay, I'm just not used to the heavy weight. Like, because my whole thing during the prep was I couldn't get used to the heavy weight. But since we were training around an injury, my coach didn't want to push it into the 90% ranges. So this didn't happen. So 2 weeks prior, I squatted 730, but lost my balance because that was the first time squatting in the 700s for months, if not years. So then we needed to at least do one conservative single near 800. And that was the one that completely destroyed my back. And we're what, 2 months post meet now? Yeah, almost 2 months and 2 weeks. And I'm still having problems walking.
Yeah. Well, here, one sec. My freaking computer is freezing up. One sec. Ha ha. Hold up. All right. Let me see. Shit. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. We good? We good? Yeah, we're good. Okay. So your back was freezing up after this 775 squat. I've had the same thing where, ironically, the exact same scenario. So I racked the squat, get done, and my back just was like shooting down my leg, sciatic nerve pain. Went to the chiropractor, and they said, you probably got a bulging disc or herniated disc or something. So it's always squat because of the compression. It's the compression on your back from the heavy weight. That's when it seems to
Yeah.
act up.
Exactly. And that was the injury that I was nursing for like 4 years. Like that was the overall reason of why I had to stop powerlifting 4 years ago. And then I thought that I was finally like better, 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 better. And I know that a lot of people probably get into this like scenarios like you get hurt, you spend 2, 3 years rehabbing the injury, and then for a lot of people, is it worth to get back into the sport? For me, it was worth to get back into the sport to try to come as close to breaking the all-time record as possible. But now at this standpoint, I don't know what's worth it anymore.
Well, how you're 25, 26?
25, yeah.
Okay, so you first injured it 4 years ago, and it flares up from time to time.
Yeah, basically.
Because that's how mine was. Once it was injured, it never went away permanently. You'd have stretches where it was like way better, and then something would cause it to flare up, and it was just a constant battle. But I don't think you're done. I really don't. I think once you have some time to kind of relax where you're not pushing it like 100%, 100 miles an hour, I think you'll get that urge again. You'll get that fight to where you want to come back and do a meet. I think it's going to come back.
That's because a lot of people have been speculating, and it's hard because now it seems like anytime I prep for something, I end up getting injured within that last like 2 to 3 weeks. So now it's like, I'm not going to lie, the approach I took for the Clash meet, I don't care what anyone says, I was still one of the most talked about people coming into that meet, being probably the shittiest dots on that board. Like, no one knew who I was, remembered what I did when I was 21 years old, but yet on every Clash post on Instagram, there was like a whole thread of hate about me, saying, I can't believe what this guy is saying, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, I've hyped it up so well, but now it's like, I kind of need to take a different approach, because I knew that I was never going to rival like Hack. But to be me and Hack talked about on those two posts, like there was 7 other amazing athletes there, and for their names were never brought up. So in terms of like marketing strategy, it was great.
Okay, look at Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. Diaz became a huge name because he beat McGregor, but his record was way crappier than Conor's. Like he has a lot of losses, but he's one of the most popular guys because he talked a lot of crap and he beat McGregor that one time. So it's not like you have to be the best guy necessarily to be one of the most popular. You don't. Because like you said, you have more personality than a lot of guys. So it can be done. It's worked for even Colby Covington. I mean, no one, he even said, he's like, I was about to be cut from the UFC. No one cared about me. No one watched my fights. They didn't pay me anything. And then once I started talking mad smack, all of his paychecks went way up. Everybody knew who he was. He became way more famous. Same thing.
Exactly. They say like the best form of currency is attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot of times in this current age. Even look at the most popular YouTube channel guys. They're not the strongest. They're not necessarily the biggest guys. They're not the best guys. It's guys who put more time in. Like you don't see the best bodybuilders with the biggest following necessarily, or powerlifters even. No. Maybe on Instagram. I think Instagram's more like, okay, if you're one of the top guys, you get more attention. But YouTube is a game of like who just puts in the most time. That's it.
Yeah, the most time, and is almost just like the most entertaining. And to put it into perspective, I mean, like the Tren twins that have just like kind of blown up now, who like they bench 500, but they squat 500, they deadlift 500. They're not overly strong, but yet everyone on the internet is, yo, have you seen how strong these guys? Have you seen how strong? It's just because they're entertaining while lifting the same as every other person.
They capitalize too on that Tren niche, because if you literally talk about Tren at all, it's that's what everybody wants to hear about. It's fascinated by it. We know this, so because I hadn't even heard of these guys until a few months ago, and then they just started blowing up, and they were in like everybody's video. Doucette was making tons of videos about them. Trigili, they were all over the place, and I'm like, who are these guys? And I still don't know a ton about them, but I'm like, well, good for them. I guess they blew up first on TikTok, because I don't go on TikTok, so I have no clue what's going on. But from what I've seen, like a lot of guys get really popular on TikTok. I think even Evan Cardone, he's got a way bigger following on TikTok. And then this other guy I've talked to, have you heard of that Tony Vendetta guy, the guy with the really wide sumo, like this crazy wide sumo?
Oh, yes.
The 2-inch range of motion guy. I've actually talked to him a bunch. We're cool now, but because we got into it a little in the beginning. Now we're cool, but he got a really big following on TikTok. He'd be like, yeah, I get millions of views on there and stuff. And then I think people turn that into Instagram, and then they blow up on TikTok first.
Yeah, it seems TikTok. You've TikTok. Yeah, TikTok is a quite easy platform because it's so fast paced. It's very easy to like get views and get followers, but kind of like you said, like they're not like, unless you're really blowing up like Tren twins or these guys, TikTok views do not equal to business sales or anyone like remembering your name. Because if you ask any single person, like, what was the second last video you watched on TikTok, they would not be able to tell you because it's just so fast. It's like 7 seconds, 7 seconds. It's like teaching them like not to remember anything because it's just so fast paced. But when these people are driving traffic to YouTube, or they're just so insane that you like could not forget them, that's where people like kind of lose it, because I think that they think social media is real life. Like the amount of hate that I got after our podcast and just hate DMs of like, you don't honestly think that, you're fucking delusional, kid. And I'm just like, do you guys not realize like the only reason of saying half of this stuff was for the point of you doing exactly what you're doing now?
Did you really get a big infiltration of messages?
A huge
Oh
infiltrate,
man,
like
okay.
huge. And this like fat Asian guy, I can't remember his name, Husan or something. That fat Asian guy on Instagram, he's like buddy buddy with John Hack or something.
Wait. Were you talking John's old training partner, Andy?
Yeah, Andy, yeah. Yeah,
Oh my God.
he made a few comments on me too. Like, bro, this thing took, like, when I tell you this took off, which is
Yeah.
exactly what I anticipated to happen, but like it took off. Like I had all the powerlifters. I had Shane Hunt making stories about me on his
I
Instagram.
did see that. I heard about it.
Yeah.
That was right before the hybrid meet. Yeah, I saw that. Some because people show me too. I don't know what's going on. Sometimes they tell me stuff. I'm like, I'm not paying too much attention, but that's interesting. No, I mean, I could see it. I know a lot of it is for show. It's to liven
Yeah.
things up. I get that.
And
I
that's what I kind of like missed, because going into this powerlifting meet, there was me and Shane Hunt, which were like physically beefing each other online. So many people would have tuned in to be like, oh shit, who's actually going to perform better on the platform? And then versus everyone's just going to tune in to see what would actually happen, versus everyone going in buddy buddy. So, I mean, even though I wasn't able to compete, which was slightly embarrassing on my side, I still proved the point that it made powerlifting more interesting when there is two people that are kind of battling it out. It makes the story more entertaining, because powerlifting as a whole is extremely boring to watch. Like, you have 3 attempts. Half of your day is just watching the bar get loaded and unloaded. So if you don't have some type of storyline, some type of outcome, these people that are saying, I'm trying to make powerlifting mainstream, let's all be friends. That's not, unfortunately, the way that it has to be done.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I don't think it'll be mainstream because it is rather boring to watch. I mean, when they're benching in a powerlifting meet, it is boring. Bench is
Yeah.
brutal, but because and that's the thing. Like 90% of YouTube doesn't even compete because they just want to get stronger. Everybody can relate to getting stronger. Everybody wants to get stronger, be better, but not everyone wants to actually compete. And a lot of people do find it boring. You're sitting there all day. So I totally get that. That's why gym lifts are almost more, they go more viral than meet lifts. Like people
Yeah.
love to see gym lifts
Yeah,
because
I used
that's
to, like, when you're like basement lifts are probably still like some of the peak lifts of your career.
yeah, it's interesting too because I talked about this with Candido. Candido said we were like, you notice that when you do your lifts on like regular plates, like normal pound plates, gets way more views than calibrated because people don't understand calibrated and it's all close in. It doesn't look as impressive. But when you put like 8 plates each side on a squat, everyone knows that's 765, and they're like, wow, that's crazy. So the pound plate videos get way more views than the calibrated.
Oh, absolutely. I
That's
can
why
attest to that.
the zoo culture videos, everyone goes to zoo culture, hits PRs because it's like this. You can see the pound plates. It's awesome. Everybody loves that.
Yeah. And they're those thick metal plates too. And like you said, it just like gives that illusion that 700 pounds takes up almost the entire bar.
Yeah, it's
So
it's it's a different ball game with that. What?
absolutely.
Okay, so what happened with you got the turned away at customs too, right?
Oh shit, we'll just dive right into it. Yeah, this is kind of funny because we kind of went over this on our last podcast. Um, so I wanted to go, and for 2023, I said that I just kind of wanted to like stick to my word and do things that I wanted to do. So I continued the weight cut, even though I did not think that I was going to be able to compete. But I wanted to just show that, like, I'm going to show up to the meet. And even if I don't lift, I'm going to be there. I'm going to make weight and I'm going to try my best. And if I can't do it, I can't do it. So halfway through a weight cut, I end up going to the States. And obviously, I only needed a few little items in terms of anabolics with me. I obviously have a source there to get it, but I was like, oh, I only need a few things, so I could probably just pack these in my checked luggage and carry on. Anyways, that was not the case. So I got pulled into secondary. They ripped my suitcase apart. And I hope this girl doesn't watch this podcast, but I got like a 280-pound juggernaut of a girl who like clearly did not lift weights at all, had no idea what testosterone was, what testosterone replacement therapy was, or anything. Called the cops, but in Canada, it's not illegal. You can possess steroids here. You can possess them, take them. As long as you're not buying or selling, there's nothing you could do. I could have 20 vials of testosterone here. Cops could come in. I'm good. But like we kind of went over in the States, even though they turn a blind eye to it, if you were to get caught with a vial of testosterone, it is the same as like cocaine or like a heavier, like influenced drug. So they were debating federally charging me, and they decided just to go with a 6-month ban from the USA.
Oh, wow. See, that's kind of wild. That's why, I mean, I only ever traveled with orals because I was like, no, they don't, orals, they don't check. You put them in a normal supplement bottle.
Exactly. A pill case. Like a pill case just goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, they don't.
But the thing is, it was even shittier because I stopped all my injections for the weight cut, obviously, because I didn't want to hold any water from the testosterone. But what I didn't want is after the meet, I planned on staying there an extra 11 days. And I didn't want my hormones to just completely tank after the meet. So I brought 2 syringes of 1 cc of testosterone cypionate each. So like I had no vials, I had no closed items. I just had 2 syringes of 1 cc each. And that's what got me the 6-month ban.
Wow. So it was just testosterone that they got mad about. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and not in a vial. Like I would understand if it was like sealed up vials that like, okay, possibly is reselling this but clearly like it's in a 3 milliliter 23 gauge 1.5 inch syringe. It's just like, I'm not good. And there was 2 of them.
That's kind of wild that it'd be that big of a deal for that. I would, but that's one reason why, even if I were to go back on TRT, like 125 mgs a week, I'll just go to the doctor and down the street and get a prescription, because then I wouldn't have the hassle of like, oh, this is illegal and you can take it if you need to travel or whatever. Obviously, yeah, we can get it easily online, but just to not have to deal with the hassle of those people and that kind of thing.
In Canada, it's a lot. I will give it to like the States. You guys are like light years ahead of Canada. But to get testosterone replacement therapy in Canada, or at least in Ontario, like we've shut down all of our men's clinics. Like for whatever reason, it went against like regulations or they were getting fined. So we have 0 men's clinic. You can't even walk into a clinic and get blood work done here. Like you need to find a doctor that will write you a requisition. And 80% of doctors refuse you the requisition, because they say that if they write you the requisition, they're held responsible for your results. So if you're open and honest with them and say, listen, like I just got done like a very hefty steroid cycle. I want to make sure that my complete blood count, my hemocrat, hemoglobin, livers are all okay. This doctor is more or less putting his name on the line, because in the past, the doctor that I saw, he said that one of his colleagues got sued because he overlooked someone's blood work and the kid ended up dying. And his parents sued the doctor for negligence, even though the kid was using anabolic steroids. And the parents won. That doctor ended up losing his license. So now most doctors are even too skeptical to give you blood work to check. And in Canada, it's not something that you can just book online like the States.
Wow. See, I can't imagine, because that's clutch for me. I book everything, just, pick out what I want to see, go and get it done. But I have thought of that. I'm like, from a liability standpoint, if they saw something on there, that was off, I feel like they'd have to tell you.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of a pain where I get that aspect of things, but that really sucks that the options are so limited. I mean, I could literally go 2 minutes down the road today and get a freaking prescription for TRT. I mean, they would do my blood work first, so I guess it'd be a week. They do
Yeah.
labs today, get them back in a week. They go, okay, we're going to put you on 200 a week. That's what they would do, just 2 minutes down the road. And I'm not even in a big city.
That's wild. Does that also like does insurance cover United States TRT, or is that kind of
No,
like a personal thing?
no, it's not going to cover it. But the way I look at it too, I'm like, well, if you're taking 100 milligrams a week, a vial's 10 milliliters, it's going to last forever. So
Yeah.
you'd have to get what, 5 vials a year, basically, which wouldn't be that expensive, even if it was $150 even. Because I mean, you can get online, whatever. I don't know how much more now, but it used to be like $40 for a bottle, 35, $40 for a bottle of test enanthate. And
Yeah, it's true.
so a doctor, you might be paying 3, 4 times that much. But at
Yeah,
least then it's like, all right, I don't have to deal with the hassle and I'm taking such a low dose, I'm not going to burn through it. That if you
absolutely.
were taking the cycle, you'd burn through it in no time, which would be annoying. But if you're like retired and just doing like TRT, it's, you know what I mean? It's like 100 a week would last forever.
Absolutely. So a question that I kind of want to go over and talk to you, because again, I always consider you like the pioneer of like all this stuff. You were here before like basically any mainstream powerlifter. In terms of drugs, we kind of spoke earlier on Instagram when I initially DM'd due to like a few relationship problems I was having about Tren and Halo. And you kind of said that you've like opted out of using Tren and Halo ever again. And I'm kind of like on that borderline of now I'm not sure if using those two compounds were worth it, because now looking back at like the panic attacks I was getting, and I'm not someone that's prone to like much mental health in terms of like depression or anxiety or panic attacks. But every week during that cycle, my thoughts were getting so negative to the point that like one time I genuinely thought like my brain snapped and like I was a serial killer. And like I know that sounds absolutely insane, but like I was just laying in bed one day and I'm like, why do these people kill people? I'm like, does something just snap in their brain? And then my thoughts on the cycle got so deep that it was like, what happens if my brain snaps and I continue to just kill people? My thoughts became so negative and so aggressive that I couldn't get out of the loop of like such negativity. But then sometimes the next day I'd wake up and I wouldn't even be able to like think of why I was thinking so negatively. Like, were you having the same type of effects on these drugs, or was it more just your aggression?
Yeah, I think Tren eliminates empathy. You have no empathy. So you're not concerned with the well-being of others. That's what it is. It's like there's no empathy. You don't care about other people. That, I mean, you really don't. You're more self-engrossed than you normally would be, and you don't think about the consequences of things. So there is a lot of overlap there between that and like, psychotic people, because that's why people are serial killers. That's why people do, these mass, these events, because they don't have empathy. They don't think in terms of consequences. So actually there is a lot of overlap on trend between what a serial killer feels or a mass killer or whatever and someone on trend. There's a lot of overlap in terms of that. Maybe not to that extent, because obviously people don't just take trend and go kill everyone. But I think there's some of that. You're still more able to keep it in check, obviously.
Yeah.
But there is a loss of empathy and the thought of consequences for your actions to an extent. So, I mean, there were times, I remember like being mad on Tren one time, and it was I like just picked up this giant stick and like threw it as hard as I could at a tree, and it like broke off and slammed into a car and stuff. I don't know. It's just, and this kind of stuff, because you're not thinking, you're just like pissed and you just freak out, and that's the roid rage kind of deal. So that is kind of a thing where it's like we're not really thinking about what could happen here, what could go wrong. Um, so yeah, that was pretty much my experience. Not necessarily Halo. Halo just kind of made me irritable, but Trent for sure. there was this anger and paranoia and lack of empathy. And um, I don't know. You can't really. I also felt very scatterbrained. I couldn't like focus at all. And it didn't help too that like your libido would be so high. It made for like trying to focus impossible. Like trying to get work done and you can't, it's just not good, man. Off in a different world.
Do you
So
find that like giving up, because I know that you have given up those two compounds, and I do feel like if I do prep again, I would want to do the same. Have you noticed a massive difference in the fact of like not using these, I guess, goaded steroids for powerlifting versus just keeping it more modern?
yeah, I mean, without Tren, it was a lot tougher to get stronger, but I still came within that range. I was still up there in a similar range of strength with fast NPP and Anavar, and then the last 4 weeks I'd pivot off the Anavar to either like Halo or Super Drill. So that's a pretty good cycle. Like if you were to do like test an MPP for the duration with Anavar, because you can run Anavar for a while without the liver toxicity effects, and you do that for like the majority of the training cycle, and then at the end you swap out the Anavar for Super Drill. Dude, I think that would be a sick cycle where you wouldn't have all the psychological side effects. You'd be pretty stable because Super Drill doesn't make anyone angry. I don't think it makes you strong and you get kind of lethargic and feel run down, but you don't get the mental effects. And you definitely don't get that from Anavar or test. And
Yeah.
some NPP doesn't really do anything negative. So that was a pretty good cycle. That's what I would do if I were you. I'd be like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to shut my career down. I'm going to take a break. But the next time around, I'll just do test and MPP and Anavar for the majority of it and then pivot off to Super Drill at the end. That would be a sick stack. And that way you wouldn't have to deal with Tren or Halo.
Very true. For in terms of like injuries and coming back from injuries, especially because these herniated discs in powerlifting is so common, I think. I like more people have them than not, especially with the flare ups. Do you think that longer preps are better than shorter preps, like when you're trying to overcome injuries, or just try to get in and get out as fast as possible?
I would say don't even necessarily have a huge time frame. Just train. And when you feel like you're clicking and you have a lot of momentum, throw your hat in the ring in a meet. And there's no shame in doing local meets. Everyone always hates on local meets, but I'm like, if your body is ready at that point in time and all there is a local meet, freaking do it instead of planning for the 2 meets a year that are huge. And then you're at a point where your body's not ready at that point and there's injuries and such, and you bomb out. And I'm like, because everyone's always like, well, if you're a top guy and you go into a local meet and destroy everyone, like that's not fair. And it's like, dude, it's not that serious. Okay. Doing a meet is doing a meet. Like you're doing a meet. Do a freaking meet. Who cares if it's in Ottawa? Like, do a damn meet then. I don't. This thing about you got to do the big meets or you're like a poser thing is ridiculous. Like it's powerlifting, guys. Like just like we've talked about, no one freaking cares in the real run in the real. Just so I think for you, I'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna mentally get to where I have a desire to get strong again. My back feels good. I've been doing bodybuilding for a year, do something like that. And then just don't even just get your feet wet in a local meet first. And then if you want to like that goes well, then jump into a bigger one. But I wouldn't get so fixated on like a specific time frame because then you can you might not peak right. Maybe just throw your name in 2 weeks out if you're feeling good at some point.
That's
That's the
true.
way to go. But
Okay.
everyone's always like, you got to do these big meets. No, you don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
because at the end of the day, I guess the only numbers for us that matters is open powerlifting numbers.
They're going to go on there if it's a local meet or a far away meet. Everyone's going to talk smack and be like, you were dodging people and you didn't travel and all this. And it's whatever, man. Who cares at this point? It's not that serious. I don't know. It's for the most part, the online community anyway isn't going to care if it's a local meet or the biggest meet ever. You might get a little more attention at a big meet, but if you're not primed for it, then what does it matter? I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
true. Do you think that the whole like you have to do big meets is more like old school because social media wasn't as present. So they wanted all like the best people at one meet. Like now that there's more social media and you can actually see, because I know a lot of like the meets, even 2 years ago, there was some questionable world records with squat depth and certain federations kind of letting certain things slide. Do you think that these like high end big meets were like, okay, we're going to hold everyone to this standard? And that's why those people would get so much hate for not attending?
No, I mean, I think it's gotten a lot worse as far as the people being mad if you're not doing a big time meet, if you're doing a local meet, because it didn't used to be, no one cared back in the day. There was boss of bosses and there was like the hybrid meet, and that was pretty much it. And that became more of a new thing where everyone would go to the bigger meets because the cash prizes were bigger. That was the main thing. That we didn't have the cash prizes at all 10 years ago. But just stick to like one of the main federations. Like this is my way of, I'm like, if the big meets back then were USPA and I do a local USPA meet, I'm still in the USPA. So screw it. So that's fair. So if everyone now is doing WRPF and that's what all the big meets are, I don't know if they have that in Canada, but it'd be like, just do a WRPF meet in Canada. It's the same federation. No one can talk because it's the same federation. That's kind of how I would kind of do it. Because I'm like, listen, I'm the one who's having to shell out the money to travel and do all this. And if I want to, I'd rather take a vacation where I take a vacation just to have fun than paying all this money to just go to a powerlifting meet. Like, then I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to do a local meet.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So kind of just more or less, instead of being like, okay, I'm doing this meet, I'm going to peak here, just keep your base so high that like when things start feeling good and clicking, that then you can do that like quick peak for the meet.
Pretty much. I mean, and sometimes like, I like jumping into a meet when you're at the point where you're normally like 4 weeks out is the best way. So you think you're like I don't know if that makes sense, but like your final peak, your last 4 weeks or whatever, last 3 training weeks, you think you really got to ramp it up. Sometimes you'll peak too early because you're pushing it too close to your max, that close to the meet. So it's almost like do the meet when you're normally like 4 weeks out. And then you're going to stay healthy. You'll miss all those injuries. You'll actually have more in the tank because you didn't just kill yourself doing even heavier weights the next 3 weeks. And then you cut out all those injury times. So if you always get injured 3 weeks out, do the freaking meet at 3 weeks out with your weights. So you're actually not going quite as heavy, but you're saving more. That's the best way to do it. Where you're actually like, I'm not going to go as hard and I'm just going to kind of wait and hold back and then I'll go for it.
Makes complete sense. It's like so stupid and simple, but like makes complete sense.
It's just one thing. It's just all experience. I don't know. Nowadays though, like once you hit your 30s too, you're like, no one freaking cares. Like they really don't. So if you ever feel like criticized and stuff, or you worry about like people think online or whatever, I'm like, you're never going to see these people anyway. I mean, you might see these powerlifter guys who have beef with you once a year, maybe. You might see them in your entire life freaking 3 times. Like, who cares? They're not going to care. No one's going to care. In 10 years, no one's going to care about any of us. I mean, for real, as far as lifting, because there's going to be other guys. So it's like, you got to take the pressure off from a lifting standpoint. You can love it and you can push yourself and enjoy it. But it's like the actual lifting part, in 10 years, no one will care about your lifts. If you're like still like, cool and everything. And like, I don't know, that's what matters. But it's just, we're all going to be irrelevant anyway. So why do we care about the people who we're going to see 2 more times in our entire lives? And I don't know.
Very true, though. One more thing that I want to kind of bring up that's kind of experience that I think you might have experience with as well is it seems like when I was 21, I pushed the most drugs I ever pushed because that's what I felt you needed to get strong. I was doing 500 milligrams of test, 500 milligrams of Tren, 80 milligrams of Halo, 60 milligrams of Anavar, 80 milligrams of Winstrol, like really just pushing it to the absolute nines because that's what I thought I needed to get strong. Ended up like, I think this one was a month out of the meet, got so injured, couldn't actually compete. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Go back to the gym lifts. I'm just fucking around in the gym with like 400 milligrams of test, 300 milligrams of MPP. Somehow I'm benching heavier than I've ever benched. I'm squatting near the max and I'm just having a blast. And then I decide to enter the clash meet again. And I'm like, okay, well, it's time to break an all time world record again. Let's pump it. So then we're up to 750 milligrams of test, 500 milligrams of Tren again. We're doing a crazy halo stack this last like 3 weeks. We're doing up to 100 milligrams a day, even on non-training days. And then I get injured again. Do you think that pushing too much drugs is actually causing a lot of the injuries in powerlifting? Like, is less more in powerlifting? Because you hear two different sides. You hear some pros taking up to like a gram and a half of everything. And then you hear some people, and maybe they are telling the truth, maybe they're not telling the truth, saying they're taking 300 milligrams of test and have never been stronger and stay injury free.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both because I think the people who say they're getting stronger than ever on just test are, lying essentially. But I think there is a point of diminishing returns for sure with every compound because I noticed the same thing. I would be having really good training. I felt great mentally, felt healthy, no injuries on, just test even. I wasn't maybe as strong. So that's where I think people are not like, I don't think you're going to be quite as strong, but you can be close. You can get close and you feel good. And then you add in all this extra stuff and you don't barely get any stronger. You get a little stronger, but not as much as you would expect. And then you feel like trash and, injuries pile up. You feel run down, that sort of thing. Mentally, you get depressed. So I think the happy medium is to find that sweet spot, that 500 tests, that, 20 super draw the last 4 weeks, that 400 MPP kind of cycle. Because when you go up to the gram of test and the 800 MPP, you barely see any gains at all compared to 5 and 4. So half of it. So I think you got to I do think it requires drugs other than testosterone, obviously, to get as strong as possible. So people just getting as strong as possible on test alone would not be a thing, but it doesn't take much. I think if it's literally like a 500 test, a 400 MPP, and then 4 weeks of super Joel, or if you do Anavar up to that point, then segue to super Joel, I think like that cycle would get you some sick gains where you wouldn't have all the injuries and you'd be just as strong as you would be on a crazy stack like the one you talked about.
Got you. Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of everything that I kind of wanted to go over. It was more just, I guess, like slow it down because, like you said, no one does care. So, like, stop putting so many like time frames on things because things don't have to be rushed.
Yeah, don't put the time frames on to where you're like, I have to get in this big meet or I'm a poser. Like, screw it. What do they care? What do you care? No one cares. They worry about themselves. We're all worried about ourselves. We're worried about what does this person think of me? What does people think of me? And they're all worried about what everyone thinks of them. So no one actually cares about. We don't spend our time with mental real estate of what all these guys, what they think of us because they're worried about what you think of them. So I don't know. It's just one of those things you kind of got to realize. But, dude, if I were you, I'd be like, screw this. I'm gonna do a local meet. I don't even care if I get pushed back because I used to do those all the time. I did a couple of big meets, but I mean, most of them were not, they'd be in the vicinity. They'd be within a drive, they didn't all require hopping on a plane to go against the best guys.
Yeah.
There's just a different time because there wasn't as much flack for that. But then you don't have to have you don't have to be this exact time frame where you have to peak perfectly. You can just kind of train and you could even run a cycle and just do the cycle like we talked about. And then if you're feeling good, you can go, okay, well, there's a meet in 3 weeks. I'll do that one and then hop in on that one. And that way you don't have to have this perfect timing because the perfect timing never comes either. Like you can never time it perfectly. You're never going to be where you want to be. So then you can just do a bunch of meets where you're not having to shell out a ton of money and just keep improving. Because everyone always does the thing too. They're like, I'm only going to do one meet so then I can have enough time to get stronger. And then you just don't make as much progress. So it's just like, just do local meets, whatever, get stronger. Your total will go up that way. It'll take the pressure off you. The monkey will be off your back, the weight off your shoulders, because you'll just have gotten under the bar again in a meet and it's out of the way. That's the best thing. Instead of being like, I have to have the best meet ever at the next meet.
Very true. Very good points.
You don't have to have the best meat ever at the next meet.
No,
You
I
know,
just have to actually get to it.
you're just putting too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Like for real, you're just trying to have like a perfect meet. And it's like, screw it, dude. Even if it's not what you want at the time, it's a step. Because if I look at the best meets I had, they just stacked up one by one. It was like 50 pounds total, 50 pounds on my total repetitively. That's what led to the biggest total. I never had like a breakthrough where I just like stacked a ton of weight on 200 pounds on my total. It never happened. It's just like, okay, I did 1800, next one, 1850, 19. 19. It was literally like that. It was just this 50-pound progression all the way up. And I just did a bunch of them like that. So you have to do some local ones. That's the main thing I'd say. But you're not done, dude. I don't think you're done. I think you're just going to change your ways a little bit as far as like cycles and having to go against these guys because, whatever.
Yeah. Good point. Probably just an immature way of thinking. Because you're right. No one does care. Like I'm just more focused on them than myself.
Well, do you enjoy lifting, right?
I love it.
You don't have to be perfect, dude. You don't have to be the best. I mean, this isn't to say don't be your best. I'm not saying, oh, let's be mediocre. That's cool. Like, it's like at the same time, though, your progress over the long term is what will get you to your peak potential, as opposed to worrying about having to go head to head with somebody or put 200 pounds on your total. Like, you'll get to your peak of what you're capable of if you just chip away at it instead of being like, oh, I got to do it at this meet, because then you just lose years.
Yeah.
Injuries are going to happen, dude. There were 2 times in my life where I was like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm done. The injury's there. It's bad. I'm done. And it was like first with a 1763 total. And I thought it was over because of my hip. And I didn't do anything for like 2 years. And then when the back got injured too, I thought that was it. And you just kind of like, you have the regression and then the progression and you keep going with it. But it's almost harder for you guys now because there's so much more social media pressure than when I was doing it. You guys have it harder because you got all these eyeballs where everyone is watching each other and competing. And that was not a thing when I was coming up.
Yeah. I mean, the social media side is hard because if you are relevant for purely strength, in terms of like, I have 3 800-pound squats on Instagram. So if I come on here and do 600 for 4, no one cares because it's like, well, you already did 8. We just want to see the heaviest lifts. So like even like stepping back, going to base phases, like you do lose a lot of that like social media attention of like taking that step back.
Yeah, that's why I think. I mean, I think you're doing it in the right way too, because it's like you're following, you don't want it to be all just based on what you can hit, like strength wise. Like that's people who do that, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they get to a point where they stop progressing or they're out of the sport or they're irrelevant, because then what do you have to fall back on? So I think it's good that you're not thought of necessarily entirely for your numbers. Like I talked to that guy, Alexander Bromley. I talked to him and he was telling me, he's like, look, I'm not strong. He's like, if people knew my lifts, like I'm not that strong, but everyone freaking loves the guy because that's not what his thing was banked on. He's just like, he's not all about like, here's my meat numbers. And then the other thing, if you do that, you put the pressure on yourself to where you're like, I have to blast all the freaking time and always be posting a better number, a better lift, or who cares? And that is honestly will grind you into the ground. You'll just be like, man, like I got to keep going all the time or I'm irrelevant. And that's not a fun feeling, dude.
No, it's not a fun feeling at all. You feel like you always have to hit a certain level. And it is very hard because even that 2 months, 3 months that you come off, like you're just like, when I come back on, like, are people going to care? And then you'll be like, well, I have to do better than last time. And then that also goes into the thing of like, oh, well, how do you do better than last time? Take more drugs.
I think it's tougher too for people who like us who are trying to make somewhat of a living in the online community, because there is always you have to stay somewhat relevant. So if you're not doing it through your lifts, you're like, dang, how do I do it? Because that obviously drives the most attention the quickest. If you hit massive lifts, that's what gets people's attention. But I just know it never lasts for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
no one can continually go up. It's like in being an NFL player, you're not continually going to get better. You're going to fall off hard one day. And that comes for everybody. Time waits for no man. It's coming. Like everyone's going to have it. I don't think you're there yet, but I think um, get to a point. It's like your body can't handle it anymore. Or you're like, how many people have killed themselves basically instead of backing off, dude? How many people?
Yeah.
It's like for real. A lot of people to try to maintain a following or maintain a presence or what people know them for have died for that, which I get it. If it's your passion, you want, that's the way to go down. I get it, but I don't know.
Like you said, there was no backup plan. There was like, that's who like they fully identified for. Like if you only identify as like hitting massive lifts without any other income streams or any other like relevancy on the internet, then yeah, you will probably go down that path.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. That's why I was like, well, I could keep grinding away, but I really don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to like have a heart attack in my 30s or something like that because you see that sometimes. So now I'm like, yeah, sometimes I feel tiny and like and I'm just still on like 230, but that feels small when you're used to being 255 and like jacked and everyone's like looking at you like, wow. Um, so it's the loss of the identity in a sense where you don't know, like, what am I now? I'm this small, weaker guy. Like, this is weird. I'm normal. That's tough. That's tough to deal with. But I feel like you
Yeah.
always got to have a goal. You always got to have a goal of some kind. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be necessarily like a weight, but there's got to be some goal or you're going to be lost.
Yeah.
In
What
my
would you say to these kids that are like coming up that like don't have like don't feel like they have goals? Because I get these questions all the time that they think that like the strength community honestly like has gotten so far that a lot of these kids can't even come close to rivaling these 18, 19-year olds that are just genetic freaks. You have these 18-year-old like natural kids that honestly like look better than 90% of adults on gear. So it's just like there's a huge demographic of kids that love fitness, but could never strive for even close to strength or looks. Like, what would you give the advice to those kids for like their specific goal? That's just like, just be the best person you can. Like,
delete your Instagram, number one. Don't go on Instagram. But for real, one thing guys have to realize is, um, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone in particular. This is just a factual statement that people have to realize. Like, you could take a lot of SARMs. You could take Rad 140, which is as powerful as Anadrol, in my opinion. It's very strong. It's like the modern day pro hormones of where you used to be able to get Superdrol on Amazon and it was stronger than most of the steroids. Rad 140 is like that. Rad 140 is insanely strong. You could take that, cycle off it 14 days before your drug tested meet, and you'd pass the test. So guys got to realize it doesn't, even though you see these crazy lifts of people who claim to be natural or crazy lifts in general, it might not be factual. And at the same time, so a lot of people are getting help. And at the same time, there's always better people than you. But it's the whole thing I talked about where it's like, if you incrementally improve, instead of going into like a competition or saying you have to take your deadlift from 600 to 750 in the next year, screw that. Take your deadlift from 600 to 650, focus on that, and then you can go 650 to 7, and you just keep going up like that. That's where the gains come in. I took my total from 18 to 21 by just going 18, 1850, 19, 1950. You can even look it up. It was exactly like that. That's what got the job done. That's the progression. Slow down the progression, chip away. You'll get to your true potential, which is what John Hack has done. John Hack never had like a massive jump in total.
no,
He just went
yeah,
up like 50 pounds of meat. So if you keep that smaller, like chipping away type setup in mind, you're going to have the most progress, and then you're not going to get stressed out looking at people way better than you. But like I said, everyone now is much harder. Everyone has a much harder time with social media because it's so much more prevalent. I didn't have to deal with all that coming up where I'm looking at everybody else as much. But now you guys you're competing with everybody. You're looking at everybody. Yeah, YouTube's way better for this. Like YouTube, you don't feel the pressure and you don't see, oh, well, outside of Lifting Vault's channel, you don't see like the crazy lifts all the time. But Instagram, you see it constantly where it's going to make you feel inadequate. So you almost have to stay in your own lane and just be like, I'm going to do what I can do, because we all have different kinds of levels of potential. But everyone gets so depressed because of what they're seeing. You just got to chip away at it, really. That's the key. It's the consistency over time with small improvements, even though it seems underwhelming.
Yeah, so like just less big goal. Like obviously have that big goal in mind, but like it takes a million steps to get there, not four massive ones.
Yeah, it takes, instead of 4 steps, it takes 20 steps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, but it's human nature to struggle with comparison. Even outside of lifting, you compare yourself in terms of, the car you drive, how much money you have, this sort of thing. We
Oh,
all do it.
exactly.
So it's human nature, and you can't just be like, yeah, it's turn off human nature. You can't 100% suppress that. But if you're more aware of it, you can fight it better. You're more aware of like, well, everyone has some crap. Everyone gets dealt some crap. So your crap is different than my crap. The stuff I have to deal with that's I'll basically say the stuff I have to deal with that's shitty is different than the stuff you have to deal with that's shitty. We all have different things. So it's not a fair comparison, and you don't see what everybody else's stuff is. Just be aware of that and you can fight it a little bit. But you're never going to be able to entirely suppress the human nature of comparison, because that's innate, that's in us. We want to be better than everyone else. We want to be doing better. And that's why we compare. But if you're more aware of like, wait a sec, it's not as it appears. They have a whole host of their own set of problems, and I have a whole host of my own set of problems, and it's just different stuff. It's almost like that with lifting. So it's like, okay, this guy might be crazy strong, but he's dealing with all this other stuff that we don't see, or he's actually truly miserable. How many people you think are really strong who are super miserable? Probably a lot.
I feel most of them.
Probably a lot. But
Like, I mean, I just purely lifted off, never like, again, this whole like comparison thing is my whole like upbringing was just like never being good enough. And then lifting kind of just translated into like, shit, I'm not good enough. So I'm just going to try to get as strong as possible. But every milestone I hit, it was just never good enough because that was just the way I was raised.
it's good though. That's what makes you good though. That's what makes you who you are, because you have something that is deep within you, your demons that are driving you to be as good as you want to be. To driving you to your true potential. So in a way, sometimes having that crappy hand makes you better because it drives you. It's like you turn that on, you're like, you remember that all the time, and it makes you better. You have that chip.
Yeah.
That's what the chip on your shoulder is. That's making you better. That's why I'm like, bro, you're not done. You're just going through a season in life where you're like, I just need a little bit of time to myself. And you need to get these other people out of your freaking head and just focus on you and be like, screw it. I'm going to do a meet. And I think you're in like Ottawa. And I'm
Yeah.
going to do, instead of Tren, I'm going to do test and NPP and Anavar and Super Droll and do that instead. And I'll be fine. I'll feel better. And I'm going to get, I don't know what your best total is right now, but I'm going to do 60 pounds, 50 pounds above that. And we're going
Yeah.
to taper it back, and we're going to compete 3 weeks out earlier than we normally would. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. Very, very true. Last thing before I have to go here, but in this term of comparison, did you ever feel like it was beneficial of like comparing yourself to somebody that was just ahead of you? Or did you always kind of just like stay in your own lane?
I think it goes back to, we're naturally going to do that. Like
Okay.
I was naturally going to keep an eye on Kaylor Woolham and Yuri Belkin and stuff back in the day, because they were kind of coming up at that point. And I was like, man, these guys are crazy. But did that do me any good? I don't think so. I mean, we all have our own abilities and our own path. So, if I can only if I literally know truly, I give it everything I had, and I can only get to 871 or whatever in competition, or 900 even, then that's what I can get to. That doesn't help me if Yuri and Kaylor can get to 950. What does that do for me? Maybe gives you someone to chase, but really, shouldn't you just be chasing yourself? Shouldn't you be going like trying to beat your numbers? If everyone just literally went to a meet and was like, I'm going to put 17 pounds, 17-pound PR on all 3 lifts. Holy shit, you just had a 51-pound total PR. That's a huge improvement. And then if you
Yeah.
do that again in 6 months, you go, okay, what's my squat PR? I'm going to put 17 pounds on that. Dude, it's stacking up. You stack
Yeah.
it. You just keep stacking it. You go 17 pounds on each lift. Or bench, is tougher. So you maybe go 22 pounds on squat and deadlift and 11 on bench. Dude, that just adds up. It doesn't help me what everyone else is doing. So I don't know. I, it'd be hard for me now, though, too, and hard blocking out all these people. Um, I don't know. I mean, there's pros and cons because at the same time, the hunger to get to the top is always more than the hunger when you're at the top. So if you're trying to come up and be and get to the top, you're going to be hungry. You're going to want it. But oftentimes when you get kind of to that top point where everyone's praising you all the time, you're just like, all right, I'm good. I've made it. And then you kind of like pull back. You're not working as hard. So that's why a lot of people in the pursuit to be somebody have more drive than someone who's already there. Because once you're getting your butt kissed all the time, it's like, where's the motivation? It's the negative energy of people telling you you're a nobody or you're a failure. That's the motivation. It's not when
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you're awesome. Like, cool. That doesn't help motivate me. It's when
Yeah.
they're telling you you're nobody. You're like, okay, let's go. So,
Very good point. I feel like now it's just to the point, you're almost right. It's like I'm miserable and shitty and depressed because it's like I felt like I left everyone down after talking the amount of shit that I talked. And the fact that like it would have been a walk-in win for Raw with Wraps and I actually would have backed it up. But you're right. Like at the end of the day, like who the fuck cares? Slow down. This is just a part of the journey. Like regroup and in a year or 2 years, if I get that drive and like feel good again, then just come back. No one cares.
shoot, that drive could come back in 4 months. But, and that's where I'd be like, I'm doing the whatever, the WRPF Ottawa meet, like, or whatever. I don't know. But
Yeah.
screw that, dude. And you don't even have to make a big production about it. You don't even have to be like, okay, we're 8 weeks out. You can just be like, we're doing this. I got a meet. I'm going to do it. And then you
Yeah.
smash it and then you just keep rolling.
Yeah.
And
Don't even document it. Just like show up to the meet, do the numbers and say, oh, yeah, by the way, we did a meet.
yeah, you could do that. You could just jump into one because no one, 3 to 6 months from now, no one even is going to remember. I mean, people have already, a lot have forgotten Julius Maddox bench from a couple years ago, even though it's still the record. Like the other lifts have been done that have overshadowed it because every 3 months, every couple months, there's another lift that overshadows the last great lift. So it all
Yeah.
gets lost anyway. Um, it's like people can be mad at somebody and then 3 months later forget about the whole thing because there's
Yeah.
always there's always something new. So at the end of the day, what's the pressure?
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
don't they don't
Just the
really
pressure
care.
you
They're
put on
not.
yourself.
I don't know. I just think if you took the pressure off yourself, you smash it. You do great
Yeah.
because they don't need. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Hey,
All
well,
right.
thank you for the
Yes, sir.
chat.
Yeah, I'll let you get going, man.
And thank you for the yeah, you're right. I'm just gonna remove the pressure and just get back to powerlifting because powerlifting used to be fun, but that last meet wasn't fun. So I think
Dude,
if I like go back to the root and just go back to like enjoying myself and having fun and it's gonna lead up to a lot better future. Probably for people watching this too that put pressure on themselves. If they get back to just having fun, like that's what lifting was supposed to be.
just aim for 50 pounds on your total. I know it sounds underwhelming. And then you can do another 50 and have
Yeah.
fun with it. Do local meets. Who cares? Um, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just lifting to get stronger because the feeling of getting stronger feels like progress in life. And that's what matters. That's what we're after. So
Right.
that's what I would say.
Got you. All right. Well, thank you for your time, brother.
Yes, sir, man. Always good to talk to you. Get me worked up.
Yeah, I mean less hyped up than last time now that walking is even an issue, but I feel a lot of people like half the people are competing, half the people are too injured to do anything. So I think a lot of the insights you gave like will give a lot of people like a better head when they're dealing with these injuries.
Yeah, because a lot of people disappear because of the pressure. If they just would chill out, they'd be able to come back. So, all right,
Absolutely.
man. I'll see you,
Thank
brother.
you.